Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows or adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Mob Psycho 100 Season 1, Episode 8. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're picking up where the last episode left off, but we kind of like rewind a little bit because we have Mob and Tomei hanging out because still looking for psychics. And I even love, she's like, "You're not lying to me, are you?" He's like, no. It's like, well, to be fair, he kind of did about the one Esper person he came across, but I don't know if he's really lied to her in any other capacity. He lied to her in that one instance, but who knows? Like, he probably actually hasn't, like, when he was around her, probably hasn't seen anyone else with psychic abilities. But either way, Teruki finds him and tells him about, like, yo, someone is pretending to be you and beating up some people. And then we pick up where the last episode left off, where Shigeo confronts Ritsu, and it's like, no, you couldn't have done this. He's like, yeah, no, brother, it was me. Because for Mob, it's like, there's no way it could be you. And I love that he was like raring up to go against his brother, and then Dimple being like, no, having been on the other side of that, was like, no, you don't have a chance of going up against your brother. And I guess he didn't want to stick around for Mob to misinterpret the situation, but also interpret the situation for what it really is, because he's like, I'm getting out of here before I get caught up in the middle of this. And he bounces. But Ritsu still tries to fight his brother, and we get this. Well, at first he's just kind of like, "Oh my God, congratulations! You have powers." I know, like, I remember you when you were younger, you would cry, not being able to kind of like tears would well in your eyes as you're trying to like bend a spoon, but couldn't. So he's like, "Congratulations!" And he's like, "Yeah, bro." Like Ritsu's like, "I had false admiration towards you," and I love Shigeo's like, "Oh my God, thanks. That's so cool." But he's like, "No, it was fake admiration. It is I had a complex and had a lot of fear from you because that's why he was so desperate to have some powers." I don't know if it was just he thought that if he had powers he'd be able to protect himself, because sadly at the end of the day, having seen what his brother can do, it has scared him. He's lived in fear ever since. He's tried to do everything he can to keep his brother composed, because he's like, I've never known what might set you off, so we've never even had an argument or fight. That's why he's always been like, oh, do you need anything? Do you need anything? Are you okay? You can talk to me. It's like, no, like, and as we saw that reaction when Masato like confronted him like a couple episodes back and was pushing him about Shigeo, and you're like, oh, what happened to my brother? You think like at the time you're like, oh, is he being overprotective? And I think with the context of what you know about what he's able to do, you're like, oh, he's trying to make sure Mob never pops his lid. And now you're like, even more so now as layers to that of he's driven by fear. He's been scared of his brother for so long, and that's why he's been so desperate. And it's morphed into a complex of feeling inferior to his brother, because it's like, right, you scare me, you could do anything, but if I have powers, maybe I can fight back against you and defend myself so I don't have to be afraid anymore. And maybe at one point in time it meant like, okay, maybe we can actually have a really good, honest relationship, but that, obviously, that twisted into a complex, and it became twisted and contorted over the years because he's been shouldering that all on his own. But also at the same time, Ritsu has no idea all that Mob does. Like, you're like worried about, oh, I'm trying not to set you off. It's like Mob has done everything possible to control himself. He's limited himself in trying not to use his powers to show off. He tries not to use them against people. He only fights back in self-defense. Most people, like, the only reason why Mob pops off is because people started shit with him first. And so, just like Mob wasn't understanding Ritsu's circumstances, I don't think Ritsu fully understood Mob's circumstances. And I think, once again, he was just driven by fear, and that love for his brother kind of got, shaded a little bit. And I thought it was so interesting that Mob was like, right, I don't believe you, that's a lie. He's like, well, at least half of it's true. And so Mob goes over and apologizes to everyone that Ritsu beat up. And for him, it's like, right, like, please be friends with my brother again. And for Ritsu, it's like, why are you bowing down to these people? I mean, these are the same people who are actually coming to beat you up. But Mob would have been okay with that. But the only issue is like, right, don't come after my brother, leave him alone. He doesn't know the circumstances, but it's like, as the older brother, I got to take responsibility. This is on me. At the same time, this is all going down, the guy who's watching nearby has to take a photo and send, and you would have thought I guess it's like when Mob goes all out, his hair looks a lot like Risu's, like it kind of gets like messy. It's not as spiky as Risu's, but it's kind of in a similar style. So they see someone with powers, they just assume it was because everyone thinks Risu is Shigeo because he's been going around pretending, well, allowing people to continue to believe that he's Shigeo. So the guy, it's like, all right, let me grab this kid and find whatever. But the other guys are like chastising Mob and being like, oh, you want us to forgive him? Then bow and apologize, and he does. Because Mob's not above that, because it's like, if it's making sure his brother's okay, he's also trying to make sure his brother doesn't slip and go down the right path. He's trying to make sure his brother continues being a good person, and he doesn't want any trouble coming his brother's way. So it's like, right, if I just have to apologize and grovel, I'll do it. I don't care. I'm not, pride isn't going to get in the way of making sure everything's super kosher and okay with my brother. But then Home Dude shows up and he wrecks shop. The fact of the matter is, undoubtedly, to be fair, like, Risu doesn't have full control of his powers. It's only because Dimple was kind of giving him the boost. And also, he was going up against regular humans. Now he's going up against a real Esper. He was able to push Mob back, but, like, Mob didn't put up a barrier or anything because he wasn't, like, trying to fight his brother. So, and Risu was like, oh, I missed. But it's like, no, like, it's just maybe he didn't hit him to full force, but it was only just enough to slightly push him back. And that's only because Mob wasn't prepared for it, Because he had his guard down lower than he would around anyone else because it's his brother. And this guy wrecks shop. He, like, takes Risu down like it's nothing. But then, like, Mob, seeing all this, kind of gets pissed because he's like, yo, that's my brother. And the Mob explosion's kind of, like, ticking up number-wise. And this guy wrecks Mob pretty easily, like, knocks him into the wall. But, the fight, the animations for the fight are like, oh, that's so beautiful and cinematic. You're just like, ooh, the animation on it's so good. But especially, like, he grabs Ritsu and he's like, all right, I'm getting out of here. It's like, oh, you kids, you need to bow down. Because he's like, yeah, you want to act all tough and everything. Like, you're middle schoolers. You got your rules. I'm like, only the strong kind of bark the orders. Well, I'm the strongest. I'm the big dog around here. So bow down to me. And the fact is that, kind of go ahead and keep enjoying, like, this youth and freedom that you claim to have. But it's like, yeah, you're still kids. And he's an adult. We don't know how old he is, but he's an adult. Which is also like, yeah, you got no shame beating up on kids and threatening kids. Once again, you're bad guys, so you're not going to be above. You're kidnapping a kid right now, so you're beating some kids up, nothing to it. But Mob gets super pissed and, like, dashes at him, and he kind of starts being like, oh, wow, there's a brother who has powers. He didn't know about that. It's like, well, Risu's the brother that no one knew about, not Shigeo, who you're fighting now, because everyone thought Risu, so that whole thing, so. But even so, this guy, like, this is the most severe fight Mob's had so far in this series. Because everything else, it's very much in that same vein of like, oh, nothing's really compared till this moment. Because everything else up until now, because I'd make even the argument, like, you can't even really count the Teruki fight either. Because he wasn't really trying in that fight. He was defending himself, but he didn't fight back. It was still self-defense. This is the most on the offense we've seen Shigeo go. But yeah, this guy is on another level, and is like, Shigeo is like, he's breaking through Shigeo's barrier and, like, beating the piss out of him. And even to the point, the other gang leaders of the school are like, oh my god, he's going to kill this kid. And he's beating Mob to a pulp. It's just like, it's one of those things where you're just like, oh, there's certain things in animes where you just see, like, people getting beat up by. That was just such a one-sided beatdown, and just like the most recent example I can use, there's a situation, what episode is it? It's like episode maybe 9 or 10 of Go-Go Loser Ranger. It's something involving the Blue Ranger. I'll just say that if you're familiar enough with no spoilers. There's an episode where he does something that makes me sick, because I'm like, it's just there's screams going on in conjunction with what's going on. It's a torture thing, and it makes me legitimately, like, queasy to my stomach. I'm like, ugh. Because I've never watched a lot of anime that would have something of that nature, and it's just like I said, the screaming and the nature of what's happening made me kind of go, ugh. It kind of, like, seeing Mob get, like, pieced up like that, not only you're just like, it's just kind of rough to look at, like, seeing him just beaten up like that. You're just like, because also you're remembering it's an adult beating up a kid, so that's what makes it even worse. But yeah, the fact is that once again, it's still like very one-sided. And even Risu was like, please stop, I'll go with you, you came for me, just leave my brother alone. But he's like, nah, I'm an asshole, so I'm gonna have to beat you to a pulp. Even to the point that he was going to like eventually kill everybody, because he's like, well, you're witnesses to everything that's going down, so I have to kill you. But that's after the fact, because Mob, like, he's like, oh, you finally like got me unleashing all my animosity. And because he still was like pushing harder before, but he hadn't really let go. He hadn't completely, even though he hit 100, he didn't lose himself like he did in the Tsuruki fight. This is him just exploding, and this is still him being him, not that other thing that came out during the Tsuruki fight. So, but Mob at 100% going toe to toe with this guy, knocking him back. I mean, like slamming him into the building. Stuff like that, like just like I said, the animation of that sequence is so beautiful, where it's just like them floating in the air and him trying to like use his power against Mob, like was it his like telekinetic something like that punch, which I like the aesthetic of how that looks like, where he basically summons these orbs around his hands, almost like, and then like it wraps around his arm. I guess it's almost supposed to be like essentially almost like gauntlets or gloves, I guess, in a sense. Just you got to like increase the power of his punches with like psychic hits like that. But like Mob and him being in the air and him like slamming the guy into the ground, and it's just like, I mean, even before that, like I think the first volley of the fight before like Mob even went to 100, or maybe it was after he went to 100, was like him like slamming the guy to the ground, and then like had all like that debris like flying towards him, and the guy's like coming towards Shiggy. It just, the whole sequence is insane, and it just seems like, holy crap, Mob wiped the floor with him. But home dude, like I think that's also what you have to consider too. The guy is older, so he has a lot more experience, because Shigeo has just always relied on like just his base level powers. He hasn't trained. That's the thing. And I'm sure at some point in this series he's going to potentially have a training arc, but it's like he's never, because he's always shut that side of himself down, he's never flexed himself. Like, yes, he can get 100%, but that's really like only like he doesn't do that freely. It's only circumstantial situations that draw out 100% of his power. But even then, it's like he spent so many years not flexing that muscle, so he's not as strong as he could be. Once again, you're also dealing with a middle schooler versus this guy who knows how long he's had his powers and how long he's been using them. So, and he's not afraid to use his powers. He's using them willy-nilly versus someone who's spent almost all of his life being reluctant to use his power. So it's like that muscle isn't as trained as anything else. He's still massively strong even without training that muscle, but it's like, how powerful can he be if he really flexed that muscle? So that ends up being the thing. But despite everything, Shigeo still got back up after the guy knocked him down, threatened to kill everybody, but then Shigeo kept going. And even this guy's like, yo, I've had to pull out my trump card, and I can't go toe-to-toe with him. I might actually lose to this kid. So he sprayed something in Mob's face and made him lose consciousness, but Mob still got back up. And ultimately, like, he grabbed Ritsu and bounced. But Mob only got back up because he did it subconsciously. He wasn't even conscious when he did it. And you're like, damn, that sucks. And everyone's so congratulatory, being like, oh my god, we survived, yeah! Because I love the moment everyone found out, like, oh my god, you see that? It's him. He's not White Tea Poison's older brother. He's White Tea Poison. So, but yeah, Dimple ran off and got Tsuruki and grabbed him and brought him back to his place. And it turns out Tsuruki knows more about this group. It turns out we finally get a proper introduction to, I doubt they're just the main antagonists of this season. I'm sure they're the main antagonists of the entire series. But we get introduced to Claw. They are a group of Espers. They basically want to cause like an Esper revolution. And I guess it's going to be like, right, it's probably that, you know, X-Men-esque thing of, we are the superior beings, we should be on top of the world. So there's been so many organizations around the world that have attempted to make psychic powers in people, and apparently Claw is the only one who succeeded in that. So I wonder, is it one psychic who eventually learned how to make other psychics? Is it just a power thing, or is it a technology thing? Because even Tsuruki says, like, right, they're all powerful. They can't beat naturals like us. So it begs the question, like, the person who started Claw, are they the only natural psychic where everyone else was manufactured? Because their whole thing is, they're kidnapping kids who have that latent ability and matures it in them and brainwashes them to their... It's a giant cult. So... And it seems like, based on a preview of the next episode, the person we saw in the opening might, with the gas mask or whatever, seems to be maybe the main antagonist, maybe the leader of Claw, or maybe they're just going to be the main antagonist of this season. Because who knows how this is all going to shake out, but beyond just kind of like wanting to seek control of everything, who knows, you know... I mean, once again, it's a legion of psychics, 100 strong, each just powerful in their own right. And because Teruki said, like, right, he knows all this because one of those members of Claw tried to grab him, and he's like, oh, I taught that guy a lesson, which I wonder, is it going to be the guy with the sword? The guy has a scar, could actually just be predating that, but I'm wondering if Teruki sent that guy flying, and that's why he has that scar on his face. I think that'd be interesting, like, if that ended up being the case. But it's probably like, yeah, that scar might have... I mean, maybe there might be a story behind the scar, or maybe it's just kind of completely unrelated. I mean that it might be unrelated to Teruki, but maybe there is a story behind him getting it, is what I'm saying, so... But Mob, despite hearing all this, it's like, right, I'm not going to bail on my brother, especially now that he's come to realize, like, oh, like, the burden he kind of put on his brother unknowingly. It's like, oh, you were shouldering this all these years, and I had no idea how you were really feeling, which is ironic considering, like, and poetic considering, like, Mob himself has been, what's the word I'm looking for? There was a different word I was looking for, but burying his feelings. So it's just kind of interesting. Once again, it's like, the irony is your brother's been doing the exact same thing. You've been burying everything. Your brother's mainly been burying his fear, so... But yeah, it turns out the reason why they found out about Shigeo in the first place, despite... I mean, he's had the benefit because he hasn't been all flashy about things, but Risu put them more so on the map because he went and met with that group, and was the guy's name Kenji who runs it, and it turns out they're like, I guess they're Claw is tapped into anything psychic related. So the moment they got any, like, they probably been keeping tabs on that group, and they probably heard about Shigeo and what he's capable of doing, because he started coming to that facility and flexing more and more, and because of that, he's put a target on his brother's back. Because to be fair, like, despite everything, Mob has kept a low enough profile that he wasn't going to draw. I mean, Claw would have found their way to him eventually. Maybe they were already on, maybe Shigeo was already on their radar to some extent, but Risu just kind of expedited what would have been an eventual, an inevitability, you know? Who knows? So I think that's interesting. And they ultimately, like, go to the facility. None of the doctors are dead, because I guess despite everything, the people at that research facility or whatever that Claw attacked and got that information, because I think that's the researchers who worked at that facility that Kenji owns. But it's like he left all of them alive because it's probably like, dead bodies draw too much attention, so just knock everybody out and get what we came for. Turns out he kidnapped all 5 of those, like, psychic kids that Risu was along with, so... And obviously, a little more comedically, we also have the other angle to the episode. Just for a little bit, we catch up with Regan, who's helping this lady who's like, oh yeah, I went to a fortune teller and she told me about this spirit on my shoulder. And he's like, oh, it seems like almost, once again, that weird thing he does where it's almost like, almost like, oh, that person's so dishonorable for taking advantage of you. So he ends up using Himalayan rock salt to, like, he scratches it on her shoulders, then gives her a massage. What's it called? Like, Regan's, like, express train or something, because it's all this aroma stuff and the massage that he's kind of like putting, like, the Himalayan salt, like, rock on you and just doing the whole thing. And I just love that. And the woman just goes, like, she's rubbing her face and then she looks younger and she's like, oh, it just feels so much younger. And he's like, oh, luckily it actually wasn't its spirit, but you know, because I would have had to deal with that without Mob. This is the first time he's never really shown up for work. I'm going to have to lecture him about that, which is less like, shut up, Regan, just shut up. So we'll see. And the fact is, all that Mob's going through right now, and Regan doesn't even know. I'm so curious if we're gonna find out something, because I know this just because obviously it's on Crunchyroll. Like I just happened to come across there is like a special episode in between season 1 and season. I guess it came out between season 1 and season 2 maybe. I don't know what it is, but it's kind of like it seems like it might be a Regan focused thing, just like an hour long or something. I saw on Crunchyroll, so I'm gonna try and check that out like before I start season 2. Obviously, got to finish season 1 first, but I'm interested to check that out because I'm like I don't know if that's going to dive into like Regan's backstory or what. But either way, I'm wondering if Home Dude who Mob fought with the purple jacket, if he ended up telling the guy with the sword about Mob or not. Because he did come back trashed and beat up, but I don't know if he said anything to Mob about it. But either way, they make it to the facility that they're going to be held captured in. So next episode is an escape/rescue situation. So it's going to be exciting to see where that all ultimately ends up taking us, how this all ends up playing out. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.